All right, good morning once again, everybody. Wednesday, January 19th. Getting back into the swing of things, my friend. Back in the beginning of the year and getting back to work. Joined as always by Dwayne Gibbs. Dwayne, how are you?
Good morning. A little cold here in North Carolina.
I bet it is because it's a little chilly down here, but nothing like you got up there. But I don't know. Everybody's get back in the
Everybody's
swing.
getting back in it.
I'm working on several deals right now, which I'll review for good reasons. But um, had an interesting case study yesterday, and now this is with somebody who's been in my consulting level program. For those who don't know, I have different levels of that you have with working with me. And he's been on the consulting level with me now for about I would say 4 years or so. And you've met him at one of the conferences, the DME conference. I believe you met him. Um, Speaking of which, everybody, if you want to hit reply, if we should go to the DME again this year, when's that coming up, doing?
That is coming up. You got me on a quick one, Kev. Give me 2 seconds. I just got a
I saw the
email
email,
from
yeah.
Nathan. Just continue on, and I'll blurt
Okay.
it out.
But there's
You caught
another
me. I was like a kid in class. All of a sudden, the teacher calls on you, and you're like, "Shit." April 30th.
April
April
30th.
30th. I didn't do too bad at rebounding.
All right. April 30th,
Pre-conference event. When is it?
Nashville.
Um, Pre-conference event is April 30th in Nashville. It's network at the axe throwing, which we have
Yeah.
done. That's always a great time. It's in Asheville. So the event itself is on May 1st,
Nashville.
2nd.
Nashville,
Nashville.
not Asheville. Yeah. Yeah.
What I say, Asheville?
I think so. Yeah.
That's my neighbor. That's why. So yeah, May 1st and 2nd to Friday, Saturday. Always a great time. Nathan puts on a great show, and
Yeah.
if you haven't
So,
been, gotta go.
yeah, we're thinking of going this year again and sponsoring. Well, we're going. Just should we be sponsor level, this and that? Curious to hear if anybody has any thoughts on us on doing that. And you can always reply that in the and Facebook or whatever social media you're looking at this on. But so back to this case study yesterday. So person's been with me good 4 or 5 years, right? So trained really well. And I don't hear from him that often anymore until something strange comes up. So it's always interesting when I see him on the schedule. I'm like, all right, something interesting is going on.
He ain't calling just to
And
say hi.
right, because he knows at this point in time, he knows where to go to find the deals. He's been, following my network guidance. He knows how to run the numbers. He knows it's numbers and stories. All these lessons and things that I talk about all the time. He knows now, right? Because he's learned it by working directly with me. Yeah, when he first started, I think we were probably every week at least, on a Zoom together going over stuff. So he really absorbed it and has done very well. And that's why I think he was invited to speak at the event briefly. I think he did. No, he's on a panel. Yeah,
He was
so
on a panel last
yeah,
year.
he's done
Mhm.
that well. And so he presents this deal ahead of time, which I always appreciate because it gives me a heads up where I can start to see how much research I might need to do. And it follows along the lines of what you've heard me say over and over again. It's never a problem until it's a problem, right? Which applies to a lot of things in this business. So what happened was there was an address that was on the tape. Now, for those who don't know, a tape is just a spreadsheet. Is what we call it in the industry, and it's a list of assets. So in the tape on the spreadsheet, it had one house number on a street, and when you started going through the paperwork, it had a different house number on the same street. Okay. So, you got to be sharp enough, number one, just to pick that up because He didn't get the paperwork until he won the bid. This was done on a bidding process, and a bidding process in this industry, typically you go off the information on the tape, and then if you win the bid, they send you the information, and then it's up to you to start to go through that again. And this is where the rubber hits the road because most people don't know how to do proper due diligence. They get sloppy and they get lazy with it because they don't know what they're looking at and they don't know what they're looking for. So he was smart. He looked at it. He said, wait a minute, the address in the paperwork, the house number is different than what is on the actual tape. In fact, there's two different owners on these addresses. And but it got more interesting than that because as he started going through the lending paperwork, there was a loan modification. The guy was a steady borrower, steady payer until 2011. Crash time, right? And so the tail end of the crash caught him, and he fell behind, and the loan got modified. In the loan modification, they have the address that matches the tape, which is
Hmm.
different than the other addresses that was in the paperwork. So as you start to go through public records, which he had done, and basically was reaching out to me as another set of eyes to go, what am I missing here? Have I done something wrong? Because I can't figure out this puzzle. So I got on public records and I'm going through and I'm seeing the same thing. And it turns out this guy not only owns one property, he owns about five on that same street.
Wow.
So it makes it harder in public records because not the a lot of public records don't have the street address. They just have the documents. At the recorder's office, you have to click and open every document to see what street. They have a very, very brief legal description, which if it's in the same subdivision, pretty much looks the same. So I'm going through, and then I get on the Zoom with him, and I'm just like, wow, this is this is tough. I can't figure it out, and I think a lender screwed up in the paperwork and wrote the loan with the wrong property address. It's a
Ah,
property that it looks like he owned at one point, but no longer owns. But
dang.
we couldn't find a foreclosure. We couldn't find a deed transfer. It just got really, really strange. And I mean, we took a deep dive into it. And what do you do? Because this loan is paying well. It pays every month, but we're like, oh, what property? What is the collateral? Because one paperwork says one thing, and other paperwork says another. It's got to be this property, but what happens if they stop paying? Because again, as long as it goes on right now, it's never a problem. As long as he just
Mm.
keeps continuing to pay, never a problem. It becomes a problem when it becomes a problem. And that is they
Yeah,
stop paying, the person
sure.
passes away, somebody inherits it, you try to take some legal action, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, the opposing attorney goes, time out. That's got the wrong address. That lien's not on the proper And it causes an issue. I'm not saying you would never win that case, but again, it's going to cost you a lot more in time and effort and money. So you've got to take that into consideration if you're buying that known problem. If you want to be aggressive investor and buy something that if it goes wrong, it's going to take you longer in court and everything else to handle, and you're okay with that, not a problem, but it's also not ideal. So in a case like that, the recommendation, because we really, somebody made clear that there were several mistakes made, and we just couldn't put together and say, oh, here's where they messed up and now get it corrected. Because some of the banks involved are no longer around.
Mm.
People forgot hundreds of banks, and lenders, I should say, as under that category of banks, went out of business after the crash. They got absorbed by other banks, and they lost paperwork. And who do you go back to say, "Hey, we need you to correct this"? That's the issue. So, I told him, I said, the only way you can really do this is start with the simple stuff. Go back and look at the servicing company and say, what do you have and who's this? But the servicing company's not legally liable for any kind of issue that you have on the paperwork. That is not their responsibility, and they're not going to give you advice on that. They're simply going to say, here's the property address that we have. Now, I saw in their paperwork one property address, and then the other where the owner lives, and there were several houses down, right?
Mm.
But it's like, okay, so which the property should be the lien should be on this one, but it doesn't look like he owns this one. It's just got this whole different thing.
Hodgepodge.
So it's yeah, it really is. So the servicing company might tell you at least who they have on their record, and we saw pretty much what that was. But you got to go back to the seller and say, what do you have? I don't think the seller knows. And my client was the same way. He goes, I don't think the seller is knowledgeable enough to understand what's happened here. They've just been lucky enough to buy a note that's just continued to pay. And they've never had to know about any of this stuff because, again, the guy's been paying. So you've got to then go to a title company and say, you guys figure it out and you insure me that if something happens down the road, um, if you're, obviously, if you're wrong, you're the insurance company, you would have to pay to make me whole. Now, will a title company do that if they see this mess and look at the same thing and go, well, we don't, that lender's no longer in business, so I don't know how we get this whole thing corrected here without it going through a court case
Yeah.
and having a judge decide, and so that becomes the problem. Or of course, you just go, hey, look, I know I made a bid and I'm committed to buy it, but you guys didn't say there was all of this issue here. And he just has to show proof that, here's the thing. And which is really simple to do because he's got all the paperwork together. So, um, again, there's endless case studies of people who got lucky in the business, felt it was easy, and didn't put a lot of effort into due diligence and things are fine. It's never a problem until it's a problem. And that's
I
when they
had a
stop paying.
excuse me, I had a conversation today is what, Wednesday, Monday with a lady and she called in she's a previous student of yours
Hmm.
and you know who I'm talking about. We just talked about her this morning and she was like, I got to get connected back with Kevin. I'm in a situation. And I said, tell me the situation. Well, I don't think I did something right. And, they're not paying. And I'm like, how long not paying? Well, 6 months. And I said, servicing company? No, I'm servicing it myself and trying to go back and find everything from the previous owner. And I don't think I did the due diligence the way I should have
Hmm.
because it's a mess and I don't think it was recorded. And what do I do? And I said, you got a mess. And I said, you need to get with Kevin and let him slow this down and go through it with you. And I said, and she goes, it's valuable. I need to get with my husband. I need to get back, working with Kevin again and have him help me because I know he can. I bought several notes from him before under his guidance, and so we'll see. That was Monday, so I haven't heard back from her. But her husband
Yeah.
was out on. He just retired, so she probably had a honeydew list for him that he's out
Yeah.
running, getting done. But nevertheless, it happens. We see it. It happens,
Mhm.
and you know, people
Yeah.
realize that they messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And the good news is there, everybody, that 90% of the time, this is all stuff that's correctable. There's that small 10% of the time where, like the deal I was just talking about, I think ultimately that's going to have to be decided in court. A judge is going to have to go through it and say, well, it's more likely than that it was meant to be this and all that. Because by the way, we didn't just look at the address. Because I say this all the time too. Properties are not bought and sold by address. They're bought and sold ultimately by the legal description. And that became an issue on this one as well. So that's something that, ultimately, both parties are going to present their case and they'll go back and they'll look at the other debts or other information about the debt and say, well, look, if that's the case, then why have you been paying for the last 11 years on the note? if it's in dispute. You know what I mean? So there's going to be
Yeah.
other evidence that would kind of point to, yes, you do have this debt obligation. But again, it's just time and money. So no problem with it. You just have to go in with an understanding that if this becomes a problem, it's going to cost me a little bit more money. And if you're good with that, great. But that's why, again, that's not the only reason we buy at a discount, everybody, but that certainly would justify a deeper discount than we might normally buy something at. So you've got to look at these issues, and speaking of issues, there's other ones as well. And um, one of the things I know I've talked about in the past is land notes. And again, there's inherent problems not only in things like paperwork that we just talked about, but also in the type of notes that you're buying. There's different risk involved in all of that. For example, if we were to compare just on a really simple basis, you've got two notes that we'll just say everything's exactly the same, the cost, the yield, I mean, all that stuff is the same. However, one's on vacant land and one's on a three-bedroom, two bath in the middle of an established neighborhood. Which one would you go for? Well, if everything else is the same, you go with the three-bedroom, two bath in the established neighborhood. Why? Because once again, if things go wrong, you've got a property that you can turn around very quickly, resell, cash out of the market in multiple ways. Versus land, you may not have that same option, or at least the option won't be as quick. Okay. Because you think about it this way, if you're buying vacant land, it's typically somebody who might have their own home, maybe two homes, and then they bought some vacant land. And if things go wrong financially, which do they stop paying first? Well, typically the vacant land. So there's risk involved in the various types of notes also. I mean, again, back in the day, we bought different types of paper. We bought professional athlete contracts. We bought cellular phone tower leases, business accounts receivables. I mean, all kinds of stuff like that. And all of them have the similarity that they are simply accounts receivable backed by something of value. But obviously, there's a big difference as to what your risks are across the boards of the ones that I just mentioned. So I'm not opposed at all to buying notes on just vacant land, but there's different calibers of vacant land. So I'm working on four deals right now. And I took a picture like this just so you could get the idea of where the vacant land. This is land that is not out in the middle of nowhere. It's by very established cities, and it's just out where the growth line is starting to go. You can actually see the growth line right here. You see houses and developments, and it stops, and it's all agricultural there. Well, eventually, what's probably going to happen? It's going to start to encroach out. Where are people living? Is the housing more affordable out here than over here? Yes, of course, but is it in close proximity? So when you have things like this, it's a little different than buying notes out in the middle of nowhere. So if I zoom in on this one, you can actually see that dividing line right there. I mean, that's the little canal that cuts through. We have a lot of those in Florida
Is
for
that in Lehigh?
agricultural reasons. It is. Good job. Good job, dude. Yeah. So it butts right up to where agricultural starts. Not every lot in this area has been built, right? If I zoom in even further, here's the actual lot, okay? And you can see there's still several lots that are not built yet, but you've got some houses here, and these are nicer houses. This is the type of land that I prefer because you know that if something goes wrong and you have to, worst case scenario, take this property back, it's resellable. Certainly. It's got power, it's got paved roads, it's got water, it's got houses built around it. It's just much further along than land out in the middle of nowhere. It's got
That's a
a
booming
quicker,
area.
yeah, it's a
That is a
quicker,
booming area.
it's a quicker type of thing. So that's one of the lots I'm working on. Here's the other one. Okay, same kind of thing. If I zoom in, you can clearly see there's all kinds of roads that are already built in through here. Not every lot is built upon once again, but there's plenty around this area. In fact, here's the lot here, and then you've got two houses, I mean, that are basically neighbors, in this area. But power, water, streets, permits, growth plan, all of that sort of stuff is in place. Here's another one I'm working on, same area. And by the way, same seller. Okay, I'm working
Mm.
on with this one, establishing a relationship on this. You know what the other thing I like about this seller, so not only are all of these, and I'll zoom in on this one, same pattern, right? Successful investors, especially in land spec like this, once they find something that works in areas that works, guess what they do? Repeatable process, right? They have a system approach. It makes sense. That's what they do. And what this guy does, which I also love, is on some of these properties, he bought the property and he's turning around and selling it for maybe 5 grand more than he paid for the land, market value. Okay. He buys them at a discount and sells them basically at market value because he also knows if he artificially inflates it, which happens a lot in land, somebody buys land for 5 grand and they go, I'll sell it for 20 grand to some investor because it's only going to be 200 bucks a month. And they sell it on monthly payments. And there's no way to justify that $20,000 value of the property because no other property is sold in that area. So how do you justify telling me it's not worth the 20 grand,
Force
Uh,
appreciation.
yeah, of course. And with this, clearly we would be able to find other lots that have sold around the area. They're all typical, the same size, they're all in the same subdivision type of a thing, not really a subdivision, but in a general neighborhood area. Much easier. And he's selling them at a reasonable price where I say, okay, that's the value. Okay, that's the value of what this is. And it just makes sense. Same guy, look at that. This guy's buying two lots within half a mile of each other. Okay, that's why I did the little line. But look, I mean, these are just cookie cutter type of things versus,
Hello.
yeah, you can buy a note on this land right now. If they stop paying, what are you gonna do? First of all, most of y'all couldn't even get out there, especially in the rainy season. There's no way, you know. Um, are you going to keep people off the property? Could you prevent dumping? I don't see any dumping. I'm just throwing out different causations here. So unless you were totally okay going, hey, if I ended up with this land, maybe I will personally do something with it in the future, then God bless you. And I get that. There's people that that love that and wouldn't mind that sort of thing at all. In fact, maybe there's people that say I would buy it just for that purpose. I hope they default. And good. But just again, know what your risk tolerance is and know that on every deal we look at, it's another one of these rules where you go, are you okay if you had to take this back? Whether that's because look, there's single family homes I've turned down too because they were just in such state of disrepair and the neighborhood was so bad. I go, no, I wouldn't be okay taking that back at any price
Mm.
because the headache's not worth the potential profit, in my opinion. Okay. So you always have to look at that and say, am okay? Am I okay with that? Here's another one and I just pulled these this morning, just to illustrate my
So
nail my
these
point down.
Southwest Florida lots that you have,
Yeah.
are they a student of yours that has them?
No, it's somebody that I met and networked with.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he does it on a regular basis. Happens to
In
be
that
here,
area?
happens to be here in Florida. And yeah,
Wow.
and what we do on those, by the way, too, is some of them I can't justify buying the whole note
Hmm.
because of investment to value reasons, right? So I'm buying partials on some of those. It just makes sense. Here's another one I was looking at. This one has no address, just coordinates. That's another thing when you're when you're looking at listings or a tape and you see no address, but here's the coordinates of the land. It's like everybody, look, man, is there this one at least it looks like it has power because you've got all
I
these
was to say
different,
there's telephone poles
yeah,
there. It's surprising that they don't have it blocked and lotted out with an
yeah.
address.
They've got all these wells out there. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you own the oil under the ground, everybody. Um,
Yeah.
there are subsurface rights, there's air rights, that sort of thing. So you might have a note on the land, but Texaco might own the oil underneath it. Somebody
They got
sold
the
those
mineral
mineral
rights.
rights. Yeah,
Yeah.
mineral rights along the road. But again, this is, it's a whole different ball game. And if you're a city slicker, so to speak, and you're speculating in land deals like this, you're going through a big learning curve. Stick with the single family homes in the neighborhoods that just makes sense. But again, if you're the type of person where you say, hey, this one at least has a house on it, it's surrounded by 30 acres, it's beautiful. Are you okay if you ended up with it? If your answer is, yeah, I would be, then okay. Let's look at the numbers, let's look at the overall deal and assess the risk and the discount and go for it. If you're not okay with this or even understand it, there's other note deals, and stay away from that kind of stuff. What a view there though, huh? Over the mountain range.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about getting away.
So yeah, I think that's Northern California up there. Looking over, that's probably Sierras, I would guess. But again, I just wanted to. I know there's a bunch of pictures on there, but again, it says 1,000 words. But the lessons are true. I mean, it's just you've got to hope for best case scenario, prepare for worst case scenario, and worst case scenario is you take it back. And if you're okay with that, you're okay with worst case scenario, and you can still make money or have personal enjoyment again if you're going to live in the house or something. You can still make money when you have that, then that's what you need to look at, and that's what you need to understand. So these are the type of issues, that come up on various types of properties, and you don't run out of inventory when your knowledge base is wider. So
Absolutely.
right now I've been looking and it's January, everybody's kind of coming through the holidays and a lot of inventory hasn't
That's a
hit
great
yet.
point.
And I haven't seen a whole lot on single family homes, but man, I am not going to pass up on something like that just because they're single family homes. I mean, Dwayne had not seen those case studies, by the way, so that was legitimate. Him going, "Holy crap, I think I know where that is," and just
Yeah, as soon as I seen
where
the
growth
the
is
the
going.
regional airport, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I that's my
yeah,
backyard.
yeah. Used to be, yeah,
Used to be, yeah.
yeah. So, um, we have to be flexible within the inventory, but within our risk tolerance and knowledge guidelines. So there are certain lessons, and I have my courses online. I haven't had to change my courses much online because of things like this, where those are just lessons that work and they still work today, and they are themes that you need to carry out throughout your investing. Now, I update my education every other Wednesday for people who are members of real estate without renters on whatever level you're on the Wednesday evening sessions that I do. That's where I update all of my education from the items that I built that is evergreen. But I had somebody yesterday go through, you might get a kick out of this, go through my evergreen training, which again, rock solid. I wouldn't change a thing in there. It's as good today as it was when I created it several years ago. And she goes, "Boy, you do look different." And I said, "Yeah, my face was a little fatter." And I said, "Yeah, I've lost I've
Slim
lost
down,
weight. I
slim
work
down.
out." Yeah, I said it's a little different. I don't travel anymore, so I'm home. I have no excuses, to not be in better shape. But I got a kick out of that. But that's the name of the game. You've got to be educated. It comes two ways. You can go through the courses and things like that, like I've created. But part of this is just learning on the job, so to speak. And going through, looking at assets, learning the tempo of the business, the patterns of it. It becomes more. muscle memory stuff. When I first start looking at deals, I didn't even think about it anymore. I got my calculator right there and I'm just boom, I just go start hitting my three ratios. I start looking at this and I'm going to that. If this works, it's just automatic at some point in time. Well, that's just built in. That's what I've been doing. But you've got to get that experience. And that's why the quickest way to shorten that is to go mentorship or partnership with someone who has a greater knowledge. And that's what I provide because I know that that's what works ultimately, because trying to learn all this just from watching videos is not the same. You can do it, but it's just a longer road, a longer learning curve, and you still are probably not going to have some of those just particulars that come up in a deal because you haven't seen it before. That's the whole thing. So that's what we offer, and you can reach out to us. You can go to kevinshortell.com, see more about it, schedule an appointment with Dwayne, or you can just email him directly, Dwayne, Duane, at kevinshortell.com. And don't forget, Shortell, you can see it on your screen there, shortle.com, and learn more about what we have. And the success rate's just been absolutely tremendous. Because it just, again, it just worked when you have the experience and the knowledge working with you. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but
The only thing I can add to that is you could only learn so much from audio or reading a book, and now you're faced with a real life situation. How can you collaborate? How can you talk through? You can't talk to the book or the audio because it's not going to give you an answer,
yeah.
and so having the power of being able to collaborate with someone that knows more than you, that's seen more than you, is definitely it reaps its reward, no question.
Yeah, I just another example right before we jumped on, Mike, who's also been a longtime client. Mike's got some notes, but he's also getting into more lending, which, it's something else that I teach. And he just said, "Hey, I've got a friend. He's buying a house. He needs a short-term bridge loan. It's a rental property and this sort of thing. And Mike wants to be compliant and do things the right way. So again, he's been with me long enough to go. He goes, I'll have him sign an affidavit saying that it's a business loan and the property's for business because it is a short-term rental. He's not living in it or anything like that. He goes, is that good enough, or do I need, to have him convert to an LLC and then, buy the property through the LLC? And the quick answer on that, which I just got back to him right away. I said, no, the affidavit is completely compliant, or they just sign it, have them sign the affidavit, and that's fine. They're attesting to the fact, under guidelines of perjury, right? Because it's a contract that it's a business type of loan, even though the property's owned in their name. Perfect. That's all you need to do. Um, Done. So now he can move on and do his do his business versus, trying to, go through all the regulations and such to figure it out. So it's definitely a
Yeah.
shortcut to results there. So all right. Well, there you go. I hope you all learned something from that. I know you did, and there's be a lot more coming. We'll have another one for you next Wednesday. If you have any thoughts on what you would like us to cover, also hit us up either by email or reply in Facebook or whatever medium that you're watching this program on. So, on behalf of Dwayne and I, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye now.